Hi guys! During this part 3, we are going to cover 3 points. The first one, we are going to talk a little bit more about the bidimension or 3-dimension array, and you will see that you can create as much dimension as you want. The second part of this video is gonna be specific on how to filter and locate inside an array, which means in order to detect where we have numbers above these numbers, or just to be able to isolate the number which are equal to this or to this or to this number or to this shape. We are going to talk about filtering and how to locate any number inside an array. And in order to close this chapter on NumPy, we will talk a little bit more about the seed function. The seed function is crucial, and stay until the end of the video because you will need the seed function when you want to replicate a randomization process, which means when you want to have the same random process, you will need to set up a seed. But we're gonna talk about it a little bit later inside this video. And mainly if you want to do more advanced algorithmic trading, or if you want to use machine learning in the future, that's gonna be very important to define a seed function for the testing process. Okay guys, let's get started. The first point that I want to talk with you today is the bidimensional array, 3-dimensional array, or like the multiple dimension array. Let's start by defining a quick array. We are going to use the same function that we have defined here. Let's just pick it up, paste it. But instead of asking 80 number, we are just going to ask 12 number, or let's say 24 number. Okay, let's execute. As you can see, you have one array of 24 number, which means you have, if we add one comment, we have one row and 24 column. If you look at it, for instance, if you let's type 10, that's gonna be maybe more obvious for you. If you type 10, you can see that we have 10 specific number instead one row. Okay, and if you want to have a bidimension array, you're gonna have to call the function which is called reshape. Let's create it. So we're gonna type np. Sorry, we're gonna use our array. Let's re-execute with our 24 values. We're gonna type array dot reshape. And let's execute. Sorry, reshape. And you need two arguments. The first argument gonna be the number of rows that you want, and second argument gonna be the number of columns. Don't forget, the first one is the number of rows, the second is the number of columns. For instance, but you are limited by the number of different digits that you have inside your array. For instance, if you want to define, let's say, 10 by 10, that will not work because the size of your array is 24 and you can't divide it in 10 by 10. You need 100 values. That means that, for instance, if you use 6 by 4, you're gonna be able to split your 24 numbers inside 6 rows and 4 columns. Let's execute and give it a try. Done. As you can see here, you have reshaped your initial array, which was 1 row and 24 columns, to 6 rows and 4 columns. For instance, you can also do 3 by 8. That will work as well. Let's execute. You have right now 3 rows and 8 columns, 8 different columns. Now, if you want to locate any number inside this array of the size of 3 by 8, which means 3 rows and 8 columns, you have two possibilities. Let's first of all set it up inside a matrix that we're gonna call, inside variable that we're gonna call mat, like matrix. Let's set it inside and print mat. Okay, and if you want to locate any number, let's say if you want to locate this number, you're gonna have to specify it inside a square bracket and say, let's say I want the second row and the 6th number. Execute. Second row, sorry, second, like, yeah, I forgot to specify, but the first row is the 0, which means that corresponds to 0, 1, and 2. And if you look at it, if you want to locate this number, that's gonna be the 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2. The second row, using the NumPy reference, which corresponds to the third row, and detecting the 6th column using the NumPy reference, which means like we consider this one as 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And we get our 292. For instance, if you choose 8, that will raise an error, because you have 8 columns, which means that's included between 0 and 7. But if you select 7, you will get to the last row. Or if you use 0, we will have 195. And if you select 0 and 0, you will get the first number here. Don't forget this rule using NumPy. You always start with the 0. Okay, now you have roughly seen how you can locate any type of number inside this array. The second point that I wanted to talk about is how you can filter it. How you can filter your array. If you want to filter your array, you will need to cover one specific point. The point that you have to never forget when you are using filtering is the fact that a filtering is a boolean, which means that's gonna convert your matrix as a boolean. Let's give it an example. For instance, if we call inside our matrix, we want where the number are above, let's say 100, execute, you will see that we have a boolean, which means these two numbers are not bigger than, which means that's raising a false, and all the other numbers except this one as well are above 100. And if you want to locate all the number without having a false or true matrix, what you're gonna have to do, you're gonna have to specify, I want inside my matrix, specify it in square bracket, where all the numbers are above 100, and that's gonna remove all the number below, which means the 57, 53, and 2, and that's gonna keep only the number above 100. For instance, if you do, I want the number above 800, you're gonna have just 858, and if you look at it, that's true. Okay, just a quick recap before to go back on the seed concerning the locating. In order to locate your data, locate, and this one is filtering. Yeah, you have to never forget that the matrix is always starting by 0, and that's the first number gonna correspond of the number of rows, and the second gonna correspond of the column. And concerning the filtering, also don't forget to insert your filter inside the square bracket if you want to avoid to have like a matrix composed by true or false. Okay, now that we have learned how we can filter any type of data, what we can do, we can talk about the last point that I wanted to introduce you about, is the seed function and the advantage of using a seed function. Essentially, the seed function gonna give you the opportunity to have the same type of randomization. Let's have an application and we're gonna talk about it afterwards. Okay, let's give a title, seed function. Okay, execute. Okay, so for instance, what we're gonna do, we are going to use the function random that we have seen previously. It was in the first video of the NumPy courses. Yeah, when we randomized using integer, for instance, we are going to use the same function, the random matrix. Let's use it. Okay, inside this function we have created a random matrix of number between 0 and 50, if you remember well. Here we ask one argument, and after we have inserted a specific size. We are going to do the same. We are going to call np random integer between 0 and 100, and we are going to ask 10 numbers. And after that, print the random matrix. But before to do that, what we're gonna do, we are going to ask Python to set up a seed. In order to do so, we are going to set up a seed, np random seed, and specify a number. The number can be chosen by you, like we can set up, for instance, 707. Execute. And as you can see here, each time that you're gonna re-execute this array, the number inside the array gonna be exactly the same. And for instance, right now, if you call this matrix again, let's say we are going to just recreate a matrix and call it. As you can see, you have different numbers. But if you call using the seed that you have defined right here, you will see that the same number gonna reappear again and again. That's why that's interesting to use a seed. For instance, if you have a population of data, let's say you have a matrix, you have like a specific population of data, and you want to randomize the process in order to take some data for your training dataset and some data from your test dataset. The fact you use a seed, you will be able to detect automatically which number have been selected for this set and which rows have been selected for the other set. And that's the main advantage of the seed. If you have any more questions about seed, please ask in the Q&A or send me a specific message and we will be able to interact about this point. We are not going to use the seed as much inside algorithmic trading. That's why I'm not going to go too much in depth about these points. But the seed is a very interesting function for you in terms of general knowledge or in terms of ambition. If your ambition is to be more fluent inside Python, well, that's interesting to have in mind of how to use the seed. Okay, it was the last point that I wanted to cover with you. It was how magic is the seed, which means that you can always retrieve your number. For instance, we can give it a try again. If you execute this one, you're not gonna have the same number, and as soon as you are calling your seed, you're gonna retrieve the initial number that you have selected. Okay, that's all for this video. And you can make a quick recap of what you should take away from this video. The first one is the reshape function, which means like how you can go from an array to a matrix composed by 3 to 8. If you want to convert this one into let's say into a 3-dimensional array, you just have to add 1 dimension. For instance, if you use 3 times 3, or like let's say 3 times 2 times 4, which means like 6 times 4, 24. As you can see, now you have 3 dimensions. You have 3 array of 2 rows and 4 columns. And if you want an extra dimension, let's say 3, 2, 2, you're gonna have 3 group of 2 array of 2 rows and 2 columns. Essentially, the latest digit gonna always be the number of columns. The one before it's gonna be the number of rows, and after that's gonna depend on the number of dimensions that you have. For instance, here we have 4 dimensions. That's the first dimension, second, the third. Sorry, there is 4 dimensions, which means like there is the first dimension is the number of specific arrays. The second one gonna be inside each of them. As you can see, you have 2 arrays. Essentially, as you can see inside this square bracket, you have 2 arrays of 2 rows and 2 columns, and you have 3 times 2 arrays of 2 rows and 2 columns. That's a 4-dimension array. But yeah, to go back on the takeaway number 1 is the function reshape, in order to reshape an array into a multi-dimensional array. The second one is the function locate. In order to locate any number, you're gonna have to use this function. The first number gonna be the number of rows, and the second one gonna be the number of arrays. And for instance, in this case where we have 4 arrays, the first one gonna be, for instance, if you want to call this number, that's gonna be for instance, let's say we want to call this number. That's working exactly like what we talked about the number of rows, which means this one gonna be the first one, that's gonna be the first one gonna be 0, this one gonna be 1, and this one gonna be 2. In this case, if you want to locate 331, we're gonna have to ask the first one. After, that's gonna be the number 0, the number 0, and the number 0. And if you execute, you're gonna have 331. If you want, let's say 620, you're gonna have to call the second one, which means that's the first group, which is gonna be called 0. That's the second group, which is gonna be called 1, and that's the third one, which is gonna be called 2. Which means you have to call the third group as 2. After, you're gonna have to call the second matrix, which is gonna be 2 again, and you will have to call the second row, which is gonna be 1, because the first row corresponds to 0, and the second column is gonna be 1, and you're gonna be able to detect the 620. So the second matrix corresponds to 1, this one corresponds to 0. If you execute, you're gonna have 620. Okay, I hope you get a good understanding about the function locate. But the function filtering, you can filter by using get inside of square brackets. You can filter on each element that you want. For instance, if you want all the elements above 400, that's gonna give you all the elements above 400. by selecting it inside the square bracket. If you don't have the square bracket, you will have a Boolean matrix. And the last point is the seed function. The seed function is working by setting up, before to create your matrix, a seed number that's gonna be able to replicate this function. That's all for this video and this last point on NumPy. I hope you enjoyed this module on NumPy. If you have any question, feel free to ask me in the Q&A. I will be happy to answer this question, and see you in the next video.